Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Alberta Seed Guide podcast, where we're going to dive deep into the economic forces shaping industries and communities. I'm editor Mark Zinkowitz, and today I have a special guest, Mark Parsons, chief economist at ATB Financial. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I know it has been a busy day for you. It is April 3rd today. Yesterday, April 2nd, was when President Donald Trump announced the latest round of tariffs. So the news, of course, is dominated by that. There's a lot of talk going on. And so I had asked you to be on today so you can kind of boil some of this down, what this means for us here in Alberta and beyond. And I want to start with the big picture. What's your overall assessment, Mark, of the current economic climate, and what are those key factors really driving things right now?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. Yesterday, a lot changed with the tariff announcement. So I can speak to that. But I think before I go there, it's interesting because the Canadian economy actually was showing signs of improvement. Alberta had, which is my focus, a lot of momentum going into this trade war. Coming out of what was the old battle, which was the inflation battle, and trying to get that under control, the Bank of Canada's made progress. So that's all lining up really nicely. And you were hearing the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem talk about that. He says, "Well, look, monetary policy is doing its job. Inflation's under control, and now we have a new challenge, and that was geopolitical, and of course Donald Trump's tariffs and what they mean." And what we're seeing now are some early indications that the U.S. economy is slowing. Consumer confidence has taken a hit both in Canada and the U.S. Because of all the uncertainty that's out there. Folks are looking at delaying major purchases. Businesses are thinking twice about major investments until they get more clarity around what the tariff situation looks like. So we're bracing ourselves now for what looks to be a pretty rough patch for the Canadian economy. Now, things have changed as of yesterday a little bit, although the headwinds remained. It's just that the dynamics are a bit different now than they were even a couple days ago.
Now, shifting to trade, like you say, the T word, tariffs have been a
Yeah.
significant factor in global markets. And so, how are those specifically impacting people both domestically and internationally right now? Let's start with the domestic part. So, I mean, these tariffs, and there's so many of these tariffs right now, and it's kind of confusing. I
Yeah.
know Canada was sort of spared from a lot of these tariffs, but there are other ones, of course, that are affecting us. So people are trying to make sense of all this. And domestically here in Canada, how is that impacting things?
Yeah, so there's two things that tariffs are doing right now. Is one is the direct impact of these tariffs actually coming into place, and then what that's going to do to demand for the product we sell. So that's a concern. But the other component is uncertainty. So not knowing what your tariff situation is going to be like is actually having a real impact on the economy. So I just want to make that point because there's sometimes people have this thought, well, hey, like, look, if we get a break from the Trump tariffs, everything's good, but it's not, because without knowing what's coming, you're still not going to, be overly inspired to start hiring or investing. So I think that's a really important point. What happened yesterday is that the tariff burden is now shifting to the rest of the world, away from Mexico and Canada. So what Trump announced on his Liberation Day, he called it, is that the U.S. Is going to exempt Canada and Mexico if the exporters comply with CUSMA, Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement rules. That essentially means that if you've kind of stamped your product as the rules compliant with the rules of origin, that it is actually a Canadian or Mexican product, then you can avoid these tariffs with two big exceptions. One is autos, where the 25% tariffs will apply. I mean, there's a bit of a carve out for if there's U.S. content in those um, motor vehicle tariffs. So that's the call. And then steel and aluminum, right? But what we've seen is Canada's and Alberta's, especially, relative tariff position looks better today than it did before. So that creates a really interesting dynamic because all of a sudden it's kind of like, well, maybe Canada is, going to be a more favorable place to get your products from than other countries that are facing higher tariffs. And before it was the opposite. Remember when Donald Trump was talking about hitting, because of fentanyl concerns and border security concerns, hitting Canada with these, punishing 25% tariffs. Now it kind of looks like it's other countries that are getting a taste of the medicine that Trump was imposing on Canada and Mexico. So that, on the surface, seems like good news for Canada. The bad news is what I'm calling the indirect impacts. And you're seeing that play out in the stock market. So if no one was concerned about these tariffs and the impact they're going to have on global growth, you would see a reaction from the stock market. But we've actually seen the opposite. The TSX, the S&P, as we have this conversation, have plunged. Oil prices have come down. So now I'm getting more concerned about the indirect effects of a slowing global economy, higher inflation, and how that's going to indirectly impact Canada and Alberta. So I actually think Alberta has come out of this in relatively good shape, assuming Tariff sticks to his plan, which is a big if. But now we have these global headwinds that we have to worry about. And so now I'm thinking, what are commodity prices going to look like if we get a slowdown in the U.S. and other countries? And as an export-based nation, and especially province here in Alberta, that's now becoming more of a concern. So I'm kind of we put out a forecast in March, and I'm like, it looks still pretty good, but for different reasons. A lighter touch on tariffs than we were assuming directly, but larger indirect impacts that are going to weigh on growth.
Yeah, speaking of commodity prices, I know farmers are looking ahead to planting season, to seeding. So that's going to be a big concern for them. And so, for our audience, Alberta farmers, and, how can our listeners, our viewers navigate these economic challenges? I know it's early yet. Things are changing every day. People are wondering, well, what does this mean? How might that affect me? And for someone like you at ATB who can really bring that expertise to people, and what's your advice for how they can best, navigate all of this right now?
Yeah, so I think as much as you can stay informed. It's literally changing by the day. I've been giving presentations that, midway through the presentation, I have to change course because we have a new announcement. That's how quickly the world's changing. But we don't want to overreact either, because sometimes these are just statements or social media posts. They don't really have anything to them. They're just threats. So we have to sort through the noise and look for the signals. And so what are things that we actually have to worry about? And those would be what I look for as executive orders, like in the case of Trump. Oh, okay, this is real. And that's something we'll have to take seriously. We're in a world with so much uncertainty right now that you do have to be looking at scenarios. I just don't think point forecast saying it's, commodity prices are going to be X or is a prudent strategy. I think you need to start stress testing and looking, okay, if this trade war is prolonged, if we do get these tariffs for a long time, then what does it look like for my business? And every business is going to be unique. Some farmers are, for example, maybe more concerned about the Chinese tariffs that have been imposed. And so that would be something closely to monitor. Some will be more exposed to the counter tariffs, which are raising input costs. So I think you have to really look at what's material to your business, like, and then focus on those risks. And to be the like for the Alberta economy, we're watching really what Trump's next move. Whether like right now, our view is that the good news is we think that he's anchoring around the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement, and this could be a sign that he wants to renegotiate that. So that's really positive. Um, and so that's what it looks like on the trade side. Broadly, we're looking at the slowdown in population growth as a big thing. And then something that will affect Alberta specifically is more around the energy trade. So those are kind of the three big factors, and sort of the slowdown in population growth. But you can't. There's just too much uncertainty out there. So you really do have to look at those scenarios as much as you can. And we publish those at ATB Economics. So like we do a high low, we update them all the time. And for businesses, just reach out to whoever you work with. I mean, this is something we pride ourselves here at ATB is like we have sort of boots on the ground. We know what's happening, what the industry's facing. I'm more the sort of the big picture guy, but there are lots of people that are day to day in this with working with clients, and they can walk through everyone's unique situation.
Yeah. So bottom line, stay informed and make sure that you're getting good advice from the experts. And that before I let you go, that leads me to my last question. Where can our listeners go to learn more about ATB's services and access the relevant information?
Yeah, so we take pride at ATB Economics in really like uncovering all things Alberta related, and specifically the industries that are important to Alberta. So of course, energy, agriculture, forestry, industries like that. And we publish daily insights, something called, it used to be called the OWL, we call it the 24/7 now, which represents how timely we're providing information to clients. And then every week on Fridays, I do a commentary of sort of my latest thinking of what's happening in the world and how it impacts Alberta. And then every quarter, we put out a quarterly economic outlook, which is pretty detailed, looking at every major sector in the Alberta economy. So that's a good starting point. For more business specific questions, of course, reach out to whoever your ATB representative is, and they'd be happy to help. And I'm closely in touch with them as well. There's a pretty good back and forth relationship.
Great, yeah, and we'll be getting links to those on our website. So thank you, Mark, for joining us today. That's a wrap for today's episode. Our viewers can stay tuned on the economy for more insights on the economy and industry trends when we talk with John Newtons, Vice President of Agriculture at ATB Financial. Again, Mark, thank you for joining us.
I appreciate you having me, Mark. And I'm sure your listeners will enjoy John Newtons. He's someone who I call on a regular basis to figure out all things agriculture. So good luck with that conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Mark, and to our audience, thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.